Good evening. Welcome to Kenya News Update today. I'm your host. Tonight, we're taking a global perspective, connecting stories of development, conflict, and diplomacy. Our deep dive begins on the iconic boardwalk of Coney Island, New York, where a new chapter is being written for a historic neighborhood, funded by a $1 million annual budget. But as we follow the money and the plans, we'll connect these local investments to much larger and often darker global currents. From the scramble for critical minerals in the Democratic Republic of Congo to luxury developments in Zanzibar and high-stakes diplomacy in Gaza. This is a 12-minute examination of how local prosperity and global power struggles are inextricably linked in 2026. Our first story takes us to the Atlantic coast of the United States. This past Sunday, Mayor Zoran Mamdani formalized the creation of Coney Island's new business improvement district during a ceremony right on the famous boardwalk. He authorized a debut annual budget approaching $1 million, a significant investment timed as the beachfront community prepares for its busiest tourism months, which see millions of visitors. Mayor Mamdani described this as a watershed moment for the historic seaside neighborhood. The funds, collected through a special assessment on local property owners, are earmarked for enhanced sanitation, public safety, marketing, and beautification projects. The goal is clear: to elevate the visitor experience and support local businesses in a district that has long been a symbol of American summer leisure, yet has faced economic challenges. Proponents argue this is a classic model of urban revitalization, using targeted, local investment to spark broader economic activity. They point to similar districts in other parts of New York City that have seen property values rise and foot traffic increase by as much as 30% following their establishment. The $1 million is not a one-time grant but a sustained annual commitment, suggesting a long-term strategy for Coney Island's future. However, critics immediately question the timing and the priorities. With a federal election looming and domestic economic anxieties high, is this the best use of resources? Some local business owners, while hopeful, express concern about the additional tax burden. They wonder if the benefits will truly trickle down to the smaller vendors and not just the larger property developers. Furthermore, this story of local investment in New York stands in stark contrast to another, more troubling narrative unfolding thousands of miles away, one that highlights the human cost of the materials that make our modern world and our luxury developments possible. This brings us to our second thread, the global scramble for critical minerals. As reported by The Guardian, a recent mining disaster in the Democratic Republic of Congo underscores the appalling human cost of this extraction. Cobalt, copper, lithium, these are the elements powering our smartphones, electric vehicles, and green energy transitions. The demand has intensified competition among global powers, including the United States, China, and the European Union. But on the ground, the story is one of perilous working conditions, environmental degradation, and conflict. Just last month, a collapse at an informal cobalt mine claimed the lives of at least 43 miners. These individuals were often digging with rudimentary tools, driven by poverty in a nation sitting atop some of the world's most valuable mineral deposits. The DRC supplies over 70% of the world's cobalt, a critical component in lithium-ion batteries. Yet, the revenue from this $207 billion global battery market often fails to translate into stability or safety for Congolese citizens. Instead, it fuels regional tensions and armed groups vying for control of mining territories. This is where geopolitics enters the frame. Recently, President Donald Trump boasted that he had stopped the conflict between Rwanda and the DRC, though fighting persists at an appalling human cost. His statement reflects a broader, transactional approach to foreign policy, where strategic resources are a key consideration. The instability in the DRC is not just a humanitarian crisis. It's a supply chain risk for the industries that Coney Island's new business district, and indeed the entire global economy, ultimately depend upon. The $1 million for clean streets in New York and the $207 billion battery market are two ends of a very long and often invisible chain. One represents curated consumer experience, the other represents the raw, dangerous extraction that makes it possible. This dichotomy is mirrored in another development story, this time in the Indian Ocean. Let's turn to Zanzibar. As the archipelago steps up its plan to become the ultimate tourist destination in East Africa, a massive $32 billion project is underway. Investors are seeking to blend a contemporary luxury lifestyle with the island's unique cultural outlook. Demand for high-quality property has grown steadily, driven by tourism expansion, infrastructure improvements, and increasing international interest in coastal living. This isn't just about hotels, it's about luxury residences, marinas, and high-end retail. The vision is to create a seamless paradise for the global elite. Proponents see this as economic transformation, job creation, skills transfer, and putting Zanzibar on the map as a world-class destination. They argue that sustainable, high-value tourism can preserve culture while generating wealth. But the critique here is familiar. Who truly benefits from a $32 billion injection focused on luxury? Does it risk creating economic enclaves, widening the gap between the tourist playgrounds and the local communities? There are concerns about cultural commodification, environmental strain on delicate coastal ecosystems, and whether the jobs created will be the low-wage service positions or meaningful, high-skill opportunities for Zanzibaris. This model of development, much like the business improvement district model, prioritizes aesthetics, experience, and attracting external capital. The question is whether this capital builds inclusive, resilient local economies or simply passes through them. The parallel to Coney Island is intriguing. Both are waterfront communities betting on curated experiences to drive their futures. One with a $1 million annual budget for local improvements, the other with a $32 billion vision for total transformation. The scales are different, but the philosophy shares a common thread. Now, let's weave in the final, most volatile thread: international diplomacy and conflict. According to reports from the Arab Weekly, President Trump is set to announce a new Gaza funding plan and the deployment of U.S. troops at the first meeting of the newly formed Board of Peace. Details remain scarce, but such a move would represent a dramatic escalation of direct U.S. involvement in the long-standing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The proposed funding could run into the hundreds of millions, if not billions, of dollars. This comes amidst a complex global landscape where U.S. attention and resources are being pulled in multiple directions: domestic renewal projects like Coney Island, strategic resource competition in Africa, and now, renewed focus on the Middle East. Critics of the administration's approach argue it reflects a pattern of grand, unilateral announcements that often lack follow-through or exacerbate underlying tensions. They point to the continued fighting in the DRC despite claims of a deal as a cautionary tale. Proponents, however, might argue that only bold, American-led action can break intractable cycles of conflict, whether in Gaza or Central Africa, and that securing stability in these regions is ultimately in the national and economic interest. So, what do we make of these interconnected stories? On one level, they seem disparate: a neighborhood beautification project in New York, a mining tragedy in Congo, a luxury development in Zanzibar, and a diplomatic maneuver for Gaza. But they are all facets of the same global system in 2026. The $1 million for Coney Island's district is a tiny drop in the ocean of global capital flows, but it symbolizes a focus on domestic placemaking. The $207 billion battery market drives the deadly rush for cobalt in the DRC. The $32 billion Zanzibar project represents the flight of capital towards luxury and experiential tourism. And the potential billions for Gaza underscore the immense costs of conflict and the geopolitical stakes involved. This is the paradox of our interconnected age. Local communities, from Coney Island to Zanzibar, are making calculated bets to secure their prosperity in a competitive global marketplace. Yet, the foundations of that marketplace, the minerals, the stability, the supply chains, are fraught with human suffering and geopolitical risk. The administration of President Trump, now in its second year, operates across all these theaters, applying a deal-making philosophy to everything from neighborhood budgets to peace boards. The results are a mixed picture: localized investments moving forward, grand diplomatic statements made, and brutal extraction continuing unabated. As we conclude, consider this: the tourist enjoying a renewed Coney Island boardwalk this summer, the buyer of a luxury apartment in Zanzibar, the driver of an electric car. They are all, often unknowingly, connected to the miner in the DRC and the cycles of conflict that diplomacy seeks to address. The $1 million, the $32 billion, the $207 billion, these are not just numbers. They are choices. Choices about where we invest, what we value, and who bears the cost. The challenge for policymakers, from Mayor Mamdani to President Trump to President William Ruto of Kenya, who must navigate these global currents for national benefit, is to build bridges between these worlds, to create economic models where local development does not come at the expense of dignity and safety elsewhere on the planet. That's our deep dive for this evening. The stories are global, but their implications are felt everywhere, including here in Kenya. From the boardwalk to the mine shaft to the negotiating table, the pursuit of prosperity in 2026 is a complex and often contradictory journey. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today.